We're very lucky today to have Rory Sullivan with us. The Sullivan family is synonymous with Grafrenet and with rugby and with Union High. And Rory had a very long teaching career. I think your teaching career spanned about 40 years at
at the
Union
school,
altogether.
yes.
And when people speak about Rory, they remember him as the most successful rugby coach that there was at Union. So, Rory, thank you very much for being here. And we're looking forward to hearing some of the anecdotes from your time at the school and all the things that happened there.
Thank you, Rob. Yes, I think talking about various coaches that we've had, in the beginning when one started off, there wasn't much to go by as far as coaching is concerned. So I've got to give the honor to Puggy Munich, my mentor, my old coach. And when it comes to success, I don't think anybody has done has done as well as what he did as coach at the school. And he wrote a book when he was asked to do something about the school, uh, and the book was A Time of My Life. Now, I could never think of a better description of my time at Union High. The 25 years that I was involved with the first team was exactly that, the time of my life.
Sure.
And rugby's been a passion. I think it comes from my granny, in fact. We used to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to listen to the All Blacks playing the Springboks in New Zealand, because my grandfather was a Springbok cricketer and my uncle was a Springbok rugby player. But strangely enough, rugby was what was the passion at home for all of us, all the boys. And it basically comes from her. As a little boy, she'd wake me 4 o'clock in the morning, getting ready to go into the field. So rugby has been the time of my life. Now, I must also add this. I want to call it the 25 years a journey, because that's what it was.
Yeah.
It was a journey. You know so little starting off as a coach. There's nothing to go by. Later on, it became easier with books being available, and then, of course, clips on YouTube and that sort of thing. So it became a lot easier. I made it a point for the boys. You know, most teams play well at home, but I put the emphasis on playing away so that no field would be a deterrent or an hindrance to performing as I wanted them to perform. Yes, so it's been an absolute. I would want to change one or two things, but for 25 years it's been a life of rugby, and teaching became secondary in the class. You'd meet one of the boys in the passageway, and you would say to them, "Are you ready for Saturday?" and that sort of thing. So it's been an absolute journey. The four areas that I thought I'd talk about: tours, because they have their own stories; referees, the passion for the game, and then, of course, the boys as individuals. So I'll mention a couple of names here of the things that they happen. Tours were always a highlight. Every second year we would tour, and we'd go and play King Edward School in Johannesburg, and Sandown and Highlands North, and one of those schools up there. And there would be an incident virtually every single tour. One of them was David McNaughton, who lives in town, had decided to get up early one morning. We'd spent the night in Parys, I think the town in the Free State, on the Vaal River. And the river was in flood, and he decided to swim across this river. And when he got to the other side, he just couldn't move. The water was so cold that he could not. And he's sitting on the other side of a swollen river. The boys came and woke me up because he'd done that early in the morning. So we got an issue. Eventually, we found two boys that took life-saving as an activity, and they had their colors for life-saving. And they swam across and virtually had to piggyback him back to the sun. Now, can you imagine going on tour and something happening to one of your players? Another incident, Trevor Rouse from the Colesberg area. We farm you when you go on tour. You farm the boys out, and you are concerned. Sometimes they may go to a place that's a bit dicey, to say the least.
Yeah.
And Fergie was deputy head then. We had an evening out with the coaches from Cares, and we got to bed at about 12. And about 2:30, there was a knock on the door, and here stands Trevor Rouse. Sir, my hosts haven't come home yet. They dropped him at their house, went partying, and he walked for about 2-3 hours in Joburg. as a coach, you've got to get the boys up every game. And it's Saturday after Saturday, because strangely enough, if you don't play on a particular Saturday, the following Saturday, they're not up for the game. So we play every Saturday. But it takes it out of me as a coach as well. And I would think, now, what do I say today? Because the game is built on the passion from the boys as they go onto the field. And there were 2 or 3 incidents that I recall. And the one was, once again, grey. Boys were busy warming up, and I'd gone into the changing room. And as I sat down on the wash basin, I felt the tiles were loose on this side of me. And the boys came in, and now it's all nervousness. There they sit. Not a word spoken. We're playing grey. And I was revving it. I was really giving it to them as well as I could. And the boys are starting to get agitated. They wanted to get on the field. And I ended the speech off by slamming my hand against this wall with the tiles. And all those tiles came down. The whole wall came down. I tell you, I had to hold them back. They wanted to get onto the field. They were so worked up after this tile incident. Then the total opposite. Once again, I actually had them in my classroom for the game. Also an important game. Also giving it everything I could. And the boys were starting to really get excited. And then they filed out to go onto the field. And the last boy, Colin Outram, just winked at me. As if to say, sir, you're not fooling us. No, I wonder where all these boys are today. Another incident, as I say to you, it takes it out of the coach. Do you have to say the right thing every Saturday afternoon for the boys to perform? Because they have to perform. And we were due to play Cares up on the Cares field. And we'd had a late night as coaches. And I said to the boys, I said, listen, this is your match. Today, I'm leaving you. You chat each other up. And you get ready for this match mentally today. And I stood outside waiting for the other match to end. And the door opened. And there was the vice captain, J.C. Fenter. Sir, come and work us up. And today, JC's a doctor. He's close to retirement already, you know.
Yeah.
But those are little things. The talk is so vital to find the right words to say at the right time without going over the top. I would be very cautious not to say things that I wouldn't want other people to hear.
Sure.
As far as the boys go, I had to honor them because they all come from different homes.
Yeah.
And I was very precise about that. I would never use the wrong words, the wrong language, and that sort of thing. But that is the passion for the game. Then we get to my favorite topic, the referees. I remember Ken McKenzie from Grey saying that when they crossed the Chatty River, now that's the river between Uitenhage and P.
Yeah.
And he would say, when you cross the Chatty River, you stand no chance, implying they would play Muir and Brandbach, I think, in those days, and what other schools they played across there. Possibly Woodridge would be included, but certainly we would be included. And there is this thing about coming up against a home ref. Now, we've had that as well. I used to make a point with the boys and say, listen, when we play away, we're 10 points down. Understand that. There's 10 on the scoreboard before you run on, because you have a home ref. On 2 occasions, we had the chairman of the Old Boys Association reffing the game. Now, that makes it very difficult for him. You know, in the majority of cases, I wouldn't expect him to be fair, to not be fair. You know, I'd give him that honor that he's fair. But there certainly is one case when the ref actually came out of the opposition changing room and he had the same socks on as the team of that particular school. I'm not going to mention that school, one of the local schools around here. And I then found out that he was the chairman of the Old Boys Association as well. But it was so obvious what he was doing. Now, I befriend refs. I need them. When we go and play in Port Elizabeth, I make sure that if this ref had blown for us previously, I would not have said anything to make him feel he's got to blow against us in any way. You know, so I was very careful with the referees. But on this particular occasion, we were unbeaten, at a very good side, and I make sure of the time, and he'd gone over the time by 5 minutes, bringing his team closer to our try line. waiting, waiting, waiting. And then one of our boys said to him, "Sir, how much time is left?" And he promptly gave a penalty 6 inches from the try line, not 5 meters as it should be, for a boy asking him a question. So the opposition boy, I nearly said the school's name now, the opposition boy just tapped the ball his foot and put it down. And they kicked it over and they won by 1 point. Now, after that game, I've always been very, very careful as to how I react to refs, because, as I say, you need them in future. But I said to my boys, "You go and shower, I'll talk to you now." And I went to the ref, and follow him. I went to him, and he was changing in the opposition, changing him. And I said to the boys in there with him, "All of you out. I want everybody out of this changing room." And of course, the ref got the fight of his life, thinking I'm going to possibly assault him, which I wasn't going to do at all. But I wanted to make sure that he understand that he actually cheated 15 schoolboys for his own gain, that sort of thing. So I was that's the one time that I've had an issue with a ref like that. Another incident, in a particular year, we didn't have a good side. And I thought I'd take the boys for an easy match against Janssenville. And they used to play our second team and beat our second team. But I thought these boys need a bit of confidence. So I arrived a little bit late, and the under-15s were playing. And Dickie Ogilvy came to me. He was coaching the under-15s, and he said to me, "You got a problem today. That man that's reffing our game is reffing your game as well." So I said, "Well, what do you mean?" So he said, "No, there isn't another ref. He's the only man in town." Then I went to speak to the coach of the opposition school of Johnson, and I said to him, "Listen, tell me a bit about the ref." So he says, "No, he's a policeman from George. This is his first game. That particular game that he's reffing is his first. Yours will be his second." Well, I don't think he'd ever seen a law book of rules, of the rugby laws. And Janssen will beat us. My boys, I feel so sorry for them. They wouldn't come out the changing room after the game. And it was through no fault of theirs. This man had no idea about reffing. He was totally biased. But I remember coming out there and I said to the boys, we all enjoy a win. But this is an aspect of life. Life can be cruel out there. And you've just been part of a situation like that, where you've been unjustly blown out of the game. No, the laws weren't applied at all. And we stood there, and I think they learned so much from that loss compared to if they'd won against Janssenville. And of course, it did Janssenville a lot of good. They were so happy with their win and so on. And I didn't mind that part, But my boys needed to win. But I think they learned so much more from the loss and the injustices that we have to face in the adult world at that particular point in time. I think of that specific group of boys, lovely boys. And then I think throughout 25 years of coaching, there are so many of them. At one stage, I thought to myself, wonder if I shouldn't send out a letter and invite all the teams, those that could, for a reunion. It would have been awesome to have all those boys come back. And some of them said, "Sir, why don't you do it?" But it entails so much, and I never really got down to doing it. So that's my story as far as referees are concerned. As I'm talking, I'm thinking of one incident regarding referees where I was at fault. We were playing Muir, and there had been an injury. I'd walked onto the field, saw to the boy, and it was just tough love in those days, "Are you okay? Well, come, get up, let's play." Today they have ambulances, quite rightly so, and medics and that sort of thing. Anyway, the boy got up, got back, got into the line out, and there was a loose scrum, there was a maul, and their number 7 flank went way off sides. Now, I was just standing next to the side of the field because I just tended to the injury. And I shouted, "Offsides!" And the ref, I was about 3 meters from the ref, and he turned around and looked at me and says, "I know, Rory," and he gave me the penalty. That was embarrassment. To actually say my name in front of everybody else. That taught me to be careful what you say next to the field. I remember my son Gary, when he was playing, "Dad, why don't you just show a little bit more emotion?" I'd learned my lesson already. There was one case where I was standing right in the corner. Also, once again, I walked around the field to give a message, because in the early days you weren't allowed to anywhere near the players. Half time they would have some order and that was it. So I also once again walked around the field and I was standing on the corner flag. We got the ball, our left wing was charging down the touchline, and I never watched the cover defense coming across. And they tackled this left wing of ours. In fact, it could have been David McNaughton. And in the tackle, they wiped me out as well because I was standing so close to the touchline. So, you know, you learn these things in the early days. Don't get involved, stay away. And when you're young and you're keen, and you perhaps say too much, you get better as you get older. To learn how to handle these things. The boys would. I remember early days, at the end of a season, they would, and I inherited this from the previous coach, where they would grab the coach and go and chuck him into the swimming pool. Now, I allowed that in my first 2 years, I think. But being wise to it, eventually, I would send them on a run around the block and back, and in that time I would disappear. So I wasn't going to be, I wasn't going to be put into the swimming pool. It happened twice, and that was it. The boys like to take the mickey out of you too. I remember going to Grant Hobson's farm, and we were getting ready to go on tour, so we were going to shoot a kudu to raise funds. We'd open the gate to the lands, Lucerne lands, for the kudu to come in, and we would go 12. And I would be on the back with my trusty 3006. Gate was open, we charged in, they had a searchlight, picked up the kudu bull, and as far as I was concerned, I dropped him. Now we looked for about an hour for that bull, we couldn't find it. And of course, when we got back, the boys let me have it, you know. They go to all this trouble and I miss this kudu bull and that sort of thing. Schoolboys do. Actually, a good bunch of boys they were. And then the week before into schools, that Friday night, we got together for coffee and a chat and so on. Then Grant said he just wants to say something. They found that kudu bull the next morning, but they wanted me to believe that I'd missed it. So for that was in about May. And it's only in August they actually told me, no, sir, you actually did shoot that kudu.
That's a bit rough.
Yeah, no, thinking because I used to enjoy hunting. I used to go on quite a few hunts. Another tour story. This was actually something to behold on that particular day. Adi Arnott, who was Herbie Arnott's son, had invited us all, which was Fergie and myself. Fergie was deputy head, the head boy, the captain, and the vice captain for lunch at the Rand Club. The club, you know, yes.
Wow.
So the boys come along, they're all in their colours blazers. You sit down and it's virtually each one's got a waiter. And I noticed these boys of mine are getting a bit talkative. And I only realized afterwards, when they offer you a drink, they won't react if you say, no, thank you. You've got to cover your glass with your hand. That's how you say no in this particular club. I should imagine that's probably what it's like in these places, you know. And these boys would say no, and while they say no, he's filling up their glass. So they look, there's another glass to drink. So at lunchtime, I had 3 boys that, with permission, had too much to drink. They were sort of hanging on each other and chatting. We kept that quiet. Nobody in Grafton knew about that, because can you imagine the teacher taking 3 boys for a drink in the middle of the day? But they were certainly, I think that made their tour. That made their tour. 3 boys could have a drink. We played Kes the next day, and these 3 boys played a blinder, despite the fact that they had something to drink. I think we lost by 1 point, 15-14, I think the score was. Boys seemed to do well against Kes. On many occasions that I've been up there with them, it's been 2 points, 3 points difference. And I mean, Kes is a big school.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
We did better against Kes on their field, and maybe they were complacent, whatever the reason. But the schools had some good teams. And since the new dispensation, the teams have gotten stronger. I know for the team this year is a pretty good team. But the emphasis has certainly swung from sport to the academics. Everybody realized how important academics are. And the sport's taking a little bit of a backseat. But there's no doubt about it that the sport, in particular rugby today, is the show window of a school. Grey was a cricket school all throughout the years. And now I'm pretty sure their cricket is as good as it's ever been. But the move there has been to rugby because it's such a high-profile sport. They get sponsors. People are willing to sponsor a rugby team, which you don't often find that they're willing to sponsor a cricket team. So that sort of thing has changed a little bit. When it gets to regrets, I think to myself, what sort of regrets do I have? And these two come to mind. The first thing is, if you want to be successful as a rugby coach, and this sounds terrible, you have to be hard. I would have wanted it to be different. But in order to get success, and I want to emphasize it, you have to be extremely hard. The moment you let down your guard as far as that is concerned, the performance isn't there. So there were times when I felt, wow, have I overstepped here with a particular boy about what I needed to say to him to get him to play to his potential? That sometimes is something which I wonder about, and I may have the regret that it had to be like that, because nice coaches come second. It's a sad thing to put it like that. The other thing is, just as far as the rugby is concerned, we started getting neutral refs at inter-schools. Now look, inter-schools is, I think if they only have 15 boys left in each school, it'll be as important as it is now, and it has been in the history of the school. And my son Gary was playing in this particular team. We had a very good side that year too. And there was a kick by the opposition force for a line out on our try line. And the linesman put his flag up 5 meters from the line, and the crowd behind went ballistic. They maintained the ball had gone out behind the flag, so it's a 22 dropout for us. And the game couldn't continue, and the ref was about to blow for the end of the game, and we were leading. We were leading 18-12. That's right. I think I'm sure. And if I'd left him, he would have blown for the end of the match, because the crowd started to get noisy. And I got up and I asked them to sit down. They then had the line out. They won the ball. And it gets worse. They apparently scored in the right-hand corner and then kicked it over to win by 1 point. But an old boy of Forceful sitting in that corner came to me after the game and he said, "Wim, dit was nie 'n 3 nie." He dotted it short. Now it was a neutral ref, and he'd asked the linesman, and the linesman wasn't neutral. And he nodded, said it was a try. Now, I'm pretty sure Forceful would have stories like that as well, where they felt they'd been done by regarding matches against us and so on. But because my son was involved in that game, it was important to me. And because I'd intervened, if I hadn't said a word, if I just sat still, that game he would have blown for the end of the match. Whether the ball went out behind the flag or not, I don't know. I never really pursued it after that. The game was done and dusted. One of those refs actually said to me one day, we'd also lost, narrowly lost. And he said to me, "Rory, I know how your head works. When this whistle goes for the final, the end of the match, you're already thinking about next year's team." And that was the way that I operated. Monday, I wanted to know how many Forceful boys are leaving in matric, and I know how many we are leaving, and have a look at the teams for them. Now, the inter-schools matches it's an absolute cycle. You look at the decades from 1950. I got an idea Forceful dominated in the 1950s. We certainly dominated in the 1960s. 1970s was split. 1980s, they dominated. Now, when you go without winning for 6-7 games, it becomes serious. It becomes really serious. And when you win that game, breaking the drought, it's like for the team that's now won, it's a year of bragging rights.
Yeah.
You can turn around and say, we're the top dog. Now, it's amazing how a rugby game can determine your outlook on life.
I remember 2003.
Yes.
I don't know what the relative strengths of the teams were, but I think it was a 10-6 or something like that. What was the score? Just Union. It was quite a close score, but I remember my boy was front rank.
That's right. I remember that. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it was just.
I think we scored in the last play of the game.
Yeah, that's right. And won.
Richard Kuberg went over in corner next to the poles and scored the winning try, as it were, and then we kicked it over. Yes, that's right.
So, and the boys gave it everything.
Absolutely.
I remember my Douglas came off with a big bandage around his head and so on. And so
Peter Maria made the statement. He was coming back from Port Elizabeth, and he got to the turnout there, and he just saw these cars whizzing by, and he realized it were his neighbors, Foursquare farmers, fathers farming, and he knew Foursquare had lost because they were leaving town. It became so important that as a coach, you'd almost swap many of the wins during the season for this inter-schools rugby game.
Yeah.
And one day somebody made the comment to me to demonstrate to the boys, to point out to them how important the society of this town feels about this game, what importance it has. So in that period of time, Foursquare had only won about 6 or 7. And I base it on that man's story that he said to me, you should play like Foursquare, because I proved to him that, because what he was getting at, we're not hard enough. So I emphasized that aspect of the game. And the biggest, and I'll probably end like this, the biggest compliment you can get from the opposition, Foursquare, is when the coach came to me and he said after the game, Eliosha was captain that year. I'm trying to think now. And he said to me, Rory, when those boys came off the field after the match, and they said to him, Meneer, die Engelse is hard. Now, for an Afrikaans boy to say that about English-speaking forwards, because they like to think we're not as hard as we should be. And that became the basis of our game. My way of playing was based on a book written by Norman McFarlane from Cairns. The book's name was My Kind of Rugby. I'm sure that's the name of the book, which was running rugby. So I like to play running rugby. But in order to play running rugby, you had to have forwards that were hard and seriously tough. So I never neglected that aspect of the game. Always made sure that the boys were up to scratch as far as that is concerned. And running the ball was just natural. The boys they all had really good hands and were quick on their feet and so on. And that actually got better as time went by. So Rob, there you are.
That's good. Brilliant. Thank you. That's wonderful.